And welcome back to the channel, and most importantly, to each a good day. Well, you can see that we're back on our Project Police Charger at this point. So if you haven't watched the previous videos in this series, this is a 2018 what is called a Charger Pursuit Edition, aka it's the trim level that usually then gets retrofitted into being a police car. And you can see when we purchased this one from auction, they left a pull bumper on it. They left the stereotypical side spotlight that you can see here. And what's unique about this one, open the back just so you can see it, they left all of the normal interior in it. So it still has the bio seat, as it's called. It still has the secure cage that separates the passengers from the back from the individuals up front. It also still has the door panels removed, as well as the bars that you can see in the window. So it was kind of one of the reasons why we purchased this vehicle. And the other reason why we purchased it is that this is an all-wheel drive Charger, seeing that it is the Pursuit model. So also what makes it a bit more unique, just to kind of continue with the recap here, is that you can see we got the bigger 5.7 liter Hemi in this one, because again, this was a prior police car that has since been retired. And the previous videos on the series, if you remember, what you saw us do was remove all the lingering third-party wiring that was put in to support all the equipment that the police officers would have needed. And we've since gotten the electrical gremlins taken care of that we know of on this vehicle so far. We went and retrofitted and changed out to factory HID headlights and away from the factory halogen projectors. We went ahead and added the equipment necessary. Sorry, got a wasp flying around me. We added the equipment necessary. You can see the hood latch here, put the wiring on the inside, and did the necessary programming to enable remote start. And I believe the last video that we did in this series is we went through the interior and took all the incandescent bulbs out and changed them out with diode dynamics LED lighting. So what we're looking to do in this video is we're going to change out the PCM. You may remember in a previous video we made a comment that we will be pulling this engine out at some point, which is again the 5.7. We'll be changing it out with the 6.4 liter, and in order to do so we're going to need an unlocked PCM, so that way we can make tune changes, because this is a 2018 vintage, and I believe it was right at 2018 and on up is when Chrysler started locking the ECUs to prevent you from running tunes. So we've went and got ourselves a completely new replacement PCM that has been unlocked by Diablo Sport. And what we're going to do is swap it out for what we have here. So we've already sent Diablo all of our information as far as the existing hardware number and programming level, that is programming version that is in this PCM. We'll get it swapped out, and then we'll do some test starts to make sure that we still have throttle response and everything's good, because that will also allow us to plug in the programmer and then disable the MDS on this vehicle. It is throwing a check engine light and a code right now for the number 1 cylinder, which is also an MDS cylinder. It's having a problem seeing the circuit to that solenoid. So either it's a wiring issue or more than likely just a bad solenoid. So once we get the swapped out PCM in, do a little bit of a test drive, make sure everything's okay with it, then what we can do is we can then plug in our Diablo tuner, which will then allow us to disable the MDS system. Because when we go in with this built-up 6.4, we're also going to be disabling that MDS system as well. So without further ado, the first thing we're going to do is get the battery disconnected from the trunk. And then when we come back, we're going to work on getting these wiper arms off of here, which you can see I've already got the cap taken off. It's just a 1 center nut. We get that popped loose. And there's a couple of different ways you can get these wiper arms off. My understanding is, just from watching a couple of videos, like right there where it bends, you can kind of push inward at that joint. And there's that wasp again, sorry. You can push inward at this joint and that should break it free from the splines and allow us to get those off. But we'll come back to that in a bit. We're going to take this entire cowl out of here because our computer is actually over there on the other side underneath this cowl. And while we're in there, we're going to go ahead and change out the cabin air filter because, you know, who knows when it was done last on this particular vehicle. So I'm going to get the battery disconnected, and I'm going to get to work on getting those fasteners you see broken free from the wiper arms, and then I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So I got you zoomed in on the driver's side wiper here, and hopefully I can get you to kind of see this. But what I was referring to earlier is if you just kind of push down right where this joint is, you can kind of use that as leverage to break the seal on the splines. I've already got the passenger side off. It came off pretty smooth. Hopefully this one will do the same thing, and it doesn't look like you're getting too swamped out in sunlight. Now, as far as marking these, sometimes they've got a master spline on them, so they'll only go on one way. On this particular vehicle, it doesn't look like there's a master spline, so what I'm doing is, since we've had some recent rainfall and some pollen, it's leaving a mark on the windshield right where the wiper arm was kind of sitting. So I'm just going to use that as reference to be able to put the arms back on again. So just kind of keep that in mind. You may want to kind of get a Sharpie when you get these nuts off like you see here, and just mark the arm in relation to the stud. But if we pick up on this arm and then push down, I'm going to kind of get in your way a little bit, get this to rock, and you can see there, and we can get that out. So they do come out pretty well. They may be a little bit rusted, so it may be a bit more of a fight for you than that was. But as you can see, I'll show you this line here. You can see that line where that wiper blade was sitting because of the rainfall and the pollen. So that'll just be our mark to help us get everything lined back up again. So the next step is going to be to get these little Christmas tree clips kind of out of there. I'll use a Christmas tree clip or a trim puller to get those out. And yes, we do have the vehicle battery disconnected at this point. So I'm just going to work on these Christmas tree clips here, get these out of here to get this cowl out, and I'll bring you back in one moment. And welcome back. So you can see we're making headway. We've got all our Christmas tree clips out. Now on the sides here as well, just be mindful, it's got this little trim piece that kind of comes around the side, but it also clips. You can see these two clips here clip into this side fender here. It also has some clips. You can probably see that one right down there that I'm pointing to, that clip into the where it's bottom of the windshield. So we're just working on getting those out. It's not too bad of a job so far, at least. It's just a matter of getting all these clips out of here. And obviously, if this is a piece that you're going to be reusing, you just want to make sure that you don't break this in the process. And you can see the rubber starting to pull away from this clip. Now in our case, I did go out and purchase a whole new cowl to put back on here. So if we break some clips in the process of this, I'm not too concerned. There's one, there should be another one right there. There we go. You can see that comes out and it just kind of goes around that hinge, and it looks like we'll have probably a few more press-in clips, I would assume, right along the top there. So yes, like I was saying earlier, we did go out and get a whole new factory cowl to put in here. It's just kind of one of the things I do when I'm rebuilding these, because you can, I mean, the rubber on this one looks kind of okay, but we know it's been in here since 2018, and since we have to remove this to get to that computer, I'm going to go ahead and just slap a new one on here. That way we know that all these rubbers that make up these seals will be good for, you know, at least the next 10 plus years at this point. And as you can see there, it's almost out. We just have to slide it past, there we go, the hood hinge, and then we can get that piece out. Yep, and you can see we did break a couple of the clips. Those are the clips that were up against the windshield. It looks like two of them are broken, which again, no harm, no foul. It's kind of the reason why we bought a new one of those, because we know that with these age and just heat cycles that, you know, plastic tends to get brittle. And there's our prize. So there's our PCM that we're going to swap out with our replacement. And of course, like I said, while we're here, no better time, but we'll go ahead and change out the factory air filter. Now, I noticed some rust in through here. Looks like some surface rust. What I'm going to do is take a little bit of time and just sand that off, make that nice and clean that up, and we're going to tape off, and we're just going to kind of quickly paint these areas on this strut tower bar. I believe that's what it is, like a reinforcement slash strut tower bar. You can see it goes from each side of the vehicle, and just go ahead, like I said, get that sanded down, get it painted. That way we just got a little bit of protection and that rust doesn't continue underneath our new piece. So it looks like we need a, I would say that's probably about a 10 millimeter, 10 or 13 millimeter. Yeah, somewhere around in there. Well, I'll let you know. And then we'll get that out of there, that PCM out of there. We'll compare it to the new one and we'll get them swapped. So one moment, let me go break this nut free and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we got our main securing bolt out. And I did promise I'd tell you what that was. That looks like that is a 13 millimeter. Looks like we got enough slack. What we're going to have to do here is just kind of pull the PCM up like this, get this first connector disconnected, and that will free it up from the top half of the harness, and it will give us enough kind of wiggle room to then continue to kind of swing it out this way. So basically this direction, you see here, more that way, in order to get to the second connector that's down below. It is kind of a tight fit. And hopefully you can see that. That's the top connector. You don't have much slack in this harness, but it looks like you got, like I said, just enough to, once again, get it up like this, get this connector off. That'll swing it the rest of the way, and you can get the bottom one. If you haven't seen these before, you see there's a plastic lever here, there's a release. So you would hit the release, that would get the gray handle up, and then you pull gently up on this gray handle, and that will help de-seat and get this connector to free up out of this PCM. I might be able to do this one-handed and just kind of show you what I mean. So you can see that we've unlocked our gray handle, we hit our release button, and what I want it to do, you can see the connectors trying to pull apart on me. So what I need to do, I'm gonna have to get both my hands in there, but again, I want this lever to help unseat this. But I'm gonna have to get in here and kind of manipulate this. This is sometimes what happens on these older connectors, is that when you pull up on this gray lever, you know, it kind of wants to unseat and take the connector apart. But you can kind of see the basic process there. I may not be able to kind of film showing me this, but what I'm going to do is kind of use both my hands, steady this connector while I'm pulling up on this lever, and see if we can get this thing to break free, because we definitely don't want to damage any of the mating pins on this connector. It would be kind of in a bad state. But you can see the process. Let me work on this and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. Well, we got our PCM out. It was a little bit of a bear, I'm not gonna lie. That is some tight spaces in there, but it was kind of what I was describing. What I was trying to show you was that on this top connector, it did start to come apart. So what we had to do was push back down on the connector, snap the connector clamshell back together, and then use our lever. And it's just kind of one of the things you got to be mindful of, especially on those lever type connections. As they start to get old, the connectors kind of tend to want to come apart, rather than help you release from here, because you can see these side locking pins that you have on this PCM, that's what those gears and that teeth, when you engage that lever, are going to do. When we put this back in, it's going to grab a hold of these little nibs here on the side and help pull that connector down and make sure it's nice and seated. But it is out, like I said, top one out first. That kind of gives you just barely enough room to wiggle this PCM out of here and get this bottom connector out. Now, interesting enough, I'm just comparing our part numbers between the PCM that Diablo sent us and what we have in there. So that's our original. You'll notice that's put out by the Continental Corporation, You'll notice the part number is the Papa 68331185 Alpha Alpha. And then of course you see the calibration sticker up at the top. Doesn't look like it's had a calibration change. It's still got the original 2017 date on the sticker. So this is the new one. Again, 68331185 Alpha Alpha. So same part number, slightly different serial number, but to be expected because it's a different unit. But you'll notice this one was put out by, I think that's Visco Technologies. So a little bit different, but all the other part numbers on this unit do match. And according to Diablo, this should be the one that we need. Again, we sent them information. If you've never ordered one of these unlocked PCMs before, what you send them, at least in the Chrysler Dodge specific ones, you send them the part number, and of course you see this module part number, you send them that one and the VIN number. Now this module part number is what they refer to when they say calibration ID. Now what I did when I ordered this one was I sent them this part number because we had it, but I also just went into my scan tool and just pulled the module information up and got my part number off of that. Just in order to save a little bit of time, just so I didn't have to pull this entire ECM out of here just to get that number off the back of it. I just read it out with a scan tool. So this is what we're going to do. You can see we got a bracket we need to transpose. Looks like we got maybe a couple 8 mils on this side. We're going to get this bracket transposed, and we're going to get things situated so we can do a reinstall. So let me get the bracket onto our new PCM, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. You can see we got a bracket transposed over. When you're putting your PCM back in, at least on this one, you can see we got a little rubber foot that just pushes in place of what is actually another mounting fastener for a bolt, for different configurations. So when you're putting that back in, make sure you don't miss that. That helps act as a shock absorber as it sits down in here this way. You can probably see this little piece of fender that kind of sticks out, and that little foot rides on that. It just keeps the PCM from slamming into the fender all day long. So what we're getting ready to do is just kind of hook things up and get it back in here. You can see that you get a little bit of room to play with on these connectors, but like I was telling you earlier, there's not much. It's not gonna lie, a little bit of a pain. You just kind of have to manhandle these connectors out of the way. So let me get to work on that. Let me get these connectors back onto this PCM. Like I said, we're going to start with the bottom one first, and then we'll get things situated and get the top one in. But the installation is reverse removal. You're going to seat these in, and when you get them far enough in, this lever will unlock, and you can kind of just gingerly push this lever down. It'll pull the connector the rest of the way in, and keep going with it until you get that lever locked back in on that rear tab. So let me get concentrated on this, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we got our PCM reinstalled, bolts back in, connectors are reattached at this point. Again, while we're here, we're going to go ahead and change out that filter. And you can see we're just going with one of these Air Technic carbon air filters. Matter of fact, hold on, yep, there's a number right there for you. Same size filter that even our Hellcat uses, because they're kind of the same platform of vehicle. Just this one's a 4-door instead of it being a 2-door. It's not too terrible to change these out. There is a direction of airflow on this filter, which is that way. You can see, which is the way we're going to put it in, because that is the direction of airflow, at least on this vehicle, is that we'll pull air in this way and pull it into the cab. So once you have this kind of back flap up here unseated, again, airflow direction. And I know that's going to make the logo upside down, and I don't necessarily like that either, but there's not really much I can do about it. Let's look at when they printed it that way. Okay, so I just want to make sure that this gets seated and it's inside its rails, and it is, like I said, pretty much straightforward. We got our arrow, and that just clips in place. Now you don't have to take the entire cowl off. to do that air filter. There is a door on the air filter if you're unfamiliar with these, which is right here. You can just open this door up this way. Once I get these tabs off of here, that'll pop out, and that gives you enough room to kind of get that old filter out and the new one in. But like I said, we will be replacing this cowl, and I'll show you that here when we get to that step. But what we want to do is go through the rest of the install process for this PCM. So what Diablo wants us to do is, once we power up the vehicle, and then we're not going to start it, but they want you to turn the ignition on, do not start the motor, let it sit there for 5 seconds, turn the vehicle off, turn it back on again, once again, do not start it, let it sit there for 5 seconds, and then turn the vehicle off. Let it sit for a few more seconds, and then finally start the vehicle and verify that we have throttle. If we do not have throttle pedal on this PCM, they do give you another step of instructions to follow to try to get that throttle pedal to calibrate. Worst case scenario, if we still do not have throttle pedal after the second set of steps, and it just means the PCM unfortunately will have to go back to them for additional programming. I'll show you that sheet here. So you'll get this nice big bright neon pink sheet that kind of runs through that process. You can see it there. So swap brackets over, yep, install the modified PCM, reinstall negative battery cable, and it said turn ignition to the run position or press the start button twice without putting the foot on the brakes. Again, they don't want you to start it. And let's see, without hitting the brake pedal, keep it on for 5 seconds, and then you turn the ignition off. What I can see here, or press the start lock button again. This should be in the lock position, and then hit the start button. Your lock should be illuminated. Now you may start the vehicle. So looks like we're going to again connect the battery cable. We're going to turn the ignition on but not start it, let it sit there for 5 seconds without hitting the brake pedal. Then we'll turn the ignition off, and then we'll so you turn ignition to the off position or press the start button again. The key should be in the locked position. Well, again, we have push button to start on this one, so we're not going to worry about the key being locked. We're just going to worry about the first part of that one, which is turning the ignition off, and then we'll go ahead and start the vehicle like normal and verify our throttle. Now, if we don't have throttle, you can see the second set of steps they have to do there, which is turn the ignition off, press and hold the throttle to the floor, press the ignition button twice with the foot off the brake again, because we don't want it to attempt to start, and you turn the ignition on to the run position again, do not start. So you're going to do this twice, but only if we'll run through these set of steps if we don't have throttle pedal. And then after we power cycle it twice, we release the throttle, and then we test the throttle again. See, these steps are kind of meant for it to go back into like a calibration type mode, but hopefully we won't need it, but if we do, they're there. So that was a lot of talking. What I want to do next is, like I said, I'm going to spend a little bit of time off camera. We're going to get this rust cleaned up off of this support bar, this tower support bar, or this strut support bar. It's called one of the two. Get a little bit of paint on that, and then we'll do a little bit more cleanup about getting some of this dirt away from the edges and the very, very bottom of our windshield that we normally can't get to clean. And then we'll do some test starts, and provided that all goes well, we'll go ahead and put the cowl back on. Now, the cowl back on, I probably won't film because it's pretty straightforward. You're sliding it back in place. You're reclipping these clips, and you're reclipping the clips on the side where that little side piece came around to meet the fender, and you're putting your Christmas tree clips back in. So exactly just the reverse removal. But let me get to work on a little bit of rust here, and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So we've got everything kind of cleaned and buttoned up. We haven't put the cowl back on, or the windshield wipers, or any of that, because in case there is an issue, we want to be able to easily access that PCM without having to take the cowl and the wipers and everything else off. So we went ahead and disconnect or reconnected the battery, and we're just kind of giving everything a moment here to get itself settled before we go through the rest of their install procedure. But one thing I forgot to comment on is that when we got the unlocked PCM, we opted to get a replacement PCM. So you saw earlier we took the original out and swapped it out with the one they sent us. Now, you don't have to do that. They do have an option, Diablo does, where you can send your PCM to them and they'll unlock it for you and send it back. I don't necessarily like that option. It's just my preference. I'd much rather keep my original PCM because I know it's good. I know it's working. So in the event something happens to this replacement, or we have to swap back to the factory one for whatever reason, maybe just to get the car home, something of that nature, then we have it to kind of fall back on. Versus if we modify the original and something happens, like maybe a tune gets corrupted or a flash gets corrupted and we can't recover it, then basically the vehicle's stuck. We're not going to be able to move it. Now, with that being said, obviously, once we get to the point we're making mods enough that the factory PCM will no longer run the vehicle, yeah, then we have to be a little bit more careful with what we're doing, but we'll have quite a few miles on this replacement PCM, so hopefully any issues that may surface will happen before then. But at least for the time being, the factory ECU will still run this vehicle just like that replacement would. So that way at least it gives us an active spare, I guess is the way of looking at it. So now that we have the battery reconnected, we've done all this, reconnected the negative battery terminal. So what we're going to do is just put the car into the run position, or press the start button twice without hitting the brake, leave it on for 5 seconds. That's what we're going to do now. And we can turn the air conditioning off. We don't need a blower motor. 5 went, turn the radio off. And then what we'll do now is, I think it's sufficient enough, we'll turn it off. Yeah, turn the ignition off position or press the start button again. The key should be in the lock position. Well, in this case, we were in the off position. It says now we can start it. So now we're going to do, we're just going to put our foot in the brake and give it a go. And you can hear that clatter, that upper end clatter that it's got, because it's been setting for a few days. But so far, and the one check engine light we kind of know about. Now again, if you read the steps in here, once we get towards the end, we're going to have some codes in here that we're going to have to clear. As you can see here, it's going to see that you know, throttle body codes is perfectly normal. So we'll plug the scan tool in and we'll see what it's got. But let's see if we got a fuel pedal. Yes, we do. We got a fuel pedal. That is awesome. So cool. We don't have to go through this second phase here. So what I want to do next, though, however, is quickly just turn the radio back on and turn the volume down. I'm just going to cycle it through some gears to make sure we don't have anything else that comes up. So that's reverse. And of course we got our trunk open, but we do have our backup camera, so that's good. Let's see if we can just roll just a little bit while we got our brake on. Let me turn that off. There we go. Can we roll? Yes, we can roll. Let's try drive. Can we roll? Yes, we can. Perfect. Okay, so we can go into gear. We can start. We do have the one check engine light, but chances are that's going to be related to that cylinder one MDS solenoid. That's bad, but we know about that. So let's go ahead and shut down. And then I'll bring it back, and what we'll do is we'll plug the scan tool in and kind of look for any codes that may have surfaced and just make sure there are not any issues with the PCM itself. So one moment. And welcome back. You have to forgive me, it's getting a little bit windy out here. Beautiful day today. Sun's out nice and bright, but it's also picking up the wind as well. But as you can see, we've got our cowl reinstalled, windshield wipers, the whole 9 yards, and we did get some paint put on that center crossbar as we were talking about earlier. You can see it sits in there quite nicely. No, I didn't plan that. It just kind of intentionally happened that way, using the red paint because I had it, one, and then two, we also used red for the extra 10 kilowatts. bonus points for you in the description of the video below if you can tell me what YouTube channel that comes from. But as you can see, we've got that in there along with our newer cowl as well. So looking good, looking a lot better than what it was. Got a lot of muck cleaned up underneath while we were there. And I didn't show this to you when we changed the filter earlier, but yeah, had a little bit of crud inside the old filter, so that's now taken care of as well. So we went ahead and did a few more ignition test cycles off camera. So we went ahead and started up, did a couple more code scans. The only code right now that is showing in the system is just the one that we know about, which is the cylinder 1 deactivation for the MDS system. Other than that, all looks good. Still have pedal response. Now, before we do any tuning or changing any settings in the PCM, as I was talking about earlier, we're going to drive this around for a few weeks first because we want some drive cycles on this. This is a new piece of equipment, so we don't, or at least I don't want to immediately make changes to it, because in the event that it develops a problem, then it becomes a question, well, was it something the tune did? Did the flash not complete? Do you have to back the settings out? Versus if we just give this a couple of weeks. I know we're chomping at the bit. I know we're eager to make changes, but we give this a couple of weeks, let it run, make sure there's no issues with that new PCM, and then at that point I'll bring it back, and then we'll get the Diablo scanner in here, and we'll do things like disable the MDS for one, which will get rid of this circuit deactivation error code that we have now. We needed the unlocked PCM because this is a 2018 vehicle, and we have to have the unlocked PCM, as you may or may not know, because at a future date, when we pull this motor out of here and put in a built-up 6.4 liter, we need the ability to custom tune that, and we can't do that with a factory PCM. So we'll be putting the built-up 6.4 liter in here, as well as a high stall torque converter, and it should make for a very torquey and fun car to drive at that point. Not that it isn't fun now, but we can make it just that much more interesting. So that was kind of the recap. Again, you can see that we've got our cowl in there. Let me give you the part number on that cowl in case you're curious. There you go there. Hopefully you can see. Yep, looks like that's coming through okay. So it's 00533222439-001. And I actually found this one on Car ID. There were a couple of places that had that cowl, but because you can see the size of it and the odd shape that it is, some of those places, some of the other places that had it wanted like almost double the cost of the part just to ship it. And that was like ground shipping too. But Car ID had it for a reasonable shipping price. It wasn't more than the cost of the part, believe it or not. So again, looks good. Looks a lot better than the old one that was in there. We've got our windshield wipers installed. Just to reiterate, we used the dirt line that accumulated underneath the wiper blades before we remove them, just to get them lined back up. And like I said, you could also use a Sharpie underneath when you take that bolt loose and just mark the stud in reference to where the wiper arm is. That is, if you're kind of like this one, where this one doesn't look like it had master splines on it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Either way, I'm rambling too much. We got a lot more install for this vehicle. We'll be putting some, if I didn't mention it earlier, I apologize for the repeat, but we'll be putting some JDI Ghost products in this vehicle. Much like we did our Hellcat, we'll be putting the Ghost Power and the Ghost Lock in this one. That'll be coming up in separate videos, again, like I mentioned, as well as doing the programming, and eventually we'll get to the big meat and potatoes of this, which is again pulling this motor out and replacing it with something a little bit bigger. But with that being said, I do appreciate you, and I'll bring you back for the next one. Thank you much. Bye.